the operative theory of AlphaJallo. So the first thing I think people have to get their mind around, because they think AlphaJallo, they focus on AlphaJallo. Focus on what the CIA is trying to do internationally in terms of surveillance and listening in to other diplomats. Get that in mind first. Is that something that the CIA would want to do? My intention is to get cars that have GPS so that I can follow these interior ministers all around when they drive their car, when they send their car back to Africa or the Middle East or wherever they go back to after they do their stint in Washington, okay? So if that's my intention of having global visibility on all these ministers of interior and ministers of defense, or let's say the president of a country and so forth, what I would want to do is I would want to source cars in the United States, be able to dope them with whatever telemetry I would want to put in the car, etc., and then be able to get it to that diplomat cheaply and under market price, so that they would buy my car versus buying something from a dealership that doesn't have the telemetry that I want. Make sense? You want listening devices in the car so that during their meetings, when they're on the phone, you get all that intelligence. You want them as they're driving around, you know where they're meeting. When 2 or 3 of them get together in some kind of meeting situation, you want to know, what's happening. If there's usually a meeting of 4 or 5 of the top people in the government, that's typically something's happening. So you want to be involved in that. In order to do that, in order to dope or place cars with the different diplomats, you need a car theft operation. Running a car theft ring in combination with a spy ring really works out well, because you make all this money when you sell the stolen car, right? And then you fund operations, which really works out well. Make sense? Well, how would you get the car to the diplomat? A private sale through a smaller specialty car dealership like Classic Motors DC. You're doping the cars, the diplomat thinks they're getting a great deal, and now you're achieving your objectives for surveillance and eavesdropping for the foreign ministers. You're going to have a car theft ring. You need to train people to steal cars. You are going to have one person who is the high-level fence. And AlphaJallo was identified as a high-level fence in both the New York case and the New Jersey case. Now, it could be that local law enforcement is just not involved and they just busted these guys. And they busted the New Jersey ring in October 2015, and a week later they got the New York ring, okay? Now Jallo's in jail. Your key guy who knows how to do all the operations, he knows how to do the kind of brute force thefts and your soft thefts, and he knows how to recruit, okay, is in jail now. Now you have 2 choices. You could say, well, geez, we're gonna have to train up another guy, or you can go to the local district attorney and you can say, hey, can we offer a guy here in jail a lighter sentence in exchange for changing his name to AlphaJallo? Okay? Because what you want is you want to spring AlphaJallo from jail so that you can keep selling cars or keep stealing cars. If you have AlphaJallo in jail, he can't steal cars, and therefore your operation of placing these cars with surveillance stops. Your program stops. And then again, you have to teach now somebody else. Every time you introduce a new person to the rat line, now there's a whole bunch of complexities that come with that. The best thing to do would be to spring that guy that everyone knows out of jail, have a party, right? Have somebody in the New Jersey jail get a half sentence for changing their name. And this has happened. I've gone to a lot of different jails all over the country where this has happened. I just need to put somebody in that place of that person. The 2 photos that we've seen of AlphaJallo in New York and New Jersey don't look anything like the original AlphaJallo picture. That was my point. So the reason why he would be in Capitol Hill on July the 12th, the 2 days after Seth Rich's, and don't forget the quote marks around the murder. I've always said the quote marks, there's quote marks around the murder, school play, quote marks. I've always said, until I see enough evidence, I don't know if we take the quote marks off the murder. That's okay. And when we have enough data, enough proof, enough forensics, enough metadata, then I might take the quote marks off the murder. But until then, I'm not taking the quote marks off the murder. We have just as much evidence that it was Sean Lucas that was killed that night, because we really don't have anything after the 10th for Sean Lucas. And there's even a school of thought, and this isn't something I proposed, but there's a school of thought that says you could have a Seth Rich disappear at the same time Sean Lucas disappears, right? And maybe Sean Lucas is just being held in a jail in Fairfax County, Virginia, until after the convention, and then Sean Lucas overdoses. We would have no idea if Sean Lucas disappeared that night, was beaten within an inch of his life to give up his contacts of who was in the lawsuit and who was the leaker at the DNC, then be put in the Fairfax County Jail just like Guccifer, and then taken out to OD that night. We don't have any evidence. It could be Sean Lucas that died that night as easily as it could have been Seth Rich. My question is, did anyone see Sean Lucas from the 10th, other than school play actors? Was he photographed at all from June 10th to August the 1st? I still have yet to see where he was. Now, I went to where Sean Lucas was from, and he lived in Silver Spring, and that was a very quick train ride down to where Lou's Bar and Grill is. It made a lot more sense for that kind of a murder than it did for Seth Rich, which was quite a bit farther away. But what I'm saying is, I'm not pushing the Sean Lucas theory. I'm just saying there's as much evidence to show that Sean Lucas was murdered that night and Seth Rich was the cover as there is Seth Rich's murder. And remember, I said quotes around the murder. So I said AlphaJallo was the wheelman. I still think it is AlphaJallo. The same guy who did the car ring here in New Jersey and the same guy who did it here in New York. And they just moved him around as an operative. I'm going to call it the operative theory of AlphaJallo. You have to kind of go through it logically, but if you go through it logically, it makes sense. If you want to surveil the diplomats, you need to be able to dope the cars. If you want to get those cars to them, you have to give them a good deal. If you want a good deal, the best deal is 5-finger discount, free, which means you steal them. If you want to steal them, you got to train somebody to steal them. And that's where an operative like AlphaJallo would come in. And that way you could tie it to state secrets. You could go to those different district attorneys and say, hey, this is a big operation. We're tracking all these, terrorist nations. We really need this guy to be stealing these cars. These cars go in and they're doped with all kinds of listening devices, all kinds of electronics and so forth. Trust us, this is a good thing. Let this AlphaJallo guy go out and we'll put in another guy and give another guy a light sentence. It's a train of justice. It's a train of justice, McCabe, coming from Charleston.